The Six Swans and the Magic Swan. The Six Swans. A king was once hunting in a large wood, and pursued his game so hotly that none of his courtiers could follow him. But when evening approached he stopped, and looking around him perceived that he had lost himself. He sought a path out of the forest, but could not find one, and presently he saw an old woman with a nodding head who came up to him. "My good woman," said he to her, "can you not show me the way out of the forest?" "Oh, yes, my lord king," she replied, "I can do that very well, but upon one condition, which if you do not fulfill, you will never again get out of the wood, but will die of hunger." "What, then, is this condition?" asked the king. "I have a daughter," said the old woman, "who is as beautiful as anyone you can find in thy whole world, and well deserves to be your bride. Now, if you will make her your queen, I will show you your way out of the wood." In the anxiety of his heart the king consented, and the old woman led him to her cottage, where the daughter was sitting by the fire. She received the king as if she had expected him, and he saw at once that she was very beautiful, but yet she did not quite please him, for he could not look at her without a secret shuddering. However, he took the maiden upon his horse, and the old woman showed him the way, and the king arrived safely at his palace, where the wedding was to be celebrated. The king had been married once before, and had 7 children by his first wife, 6 boys and a girl, whom he loved above everything else in the world. He became afraid soon that the stepmother might not treat his children very well, and might even do them some great injury, so he took them away to a lonely castle which stood in the midst of a forest. The castle was so entirely hidden, and the way to it was so difficult to discover, that he himself could not have found it if a wise woman had not given him a ball of cotton, which had the wonderful property, when he threw it before him, of unrolling itself and showing him the right path. The king went, however, so often to see his dear children, that the queen, noticing his absence, became inquisitive, and wished to know what he went to fetch out of the forest. So she gave his servants a great quantity of money, and they disclosed to her the secret, and also told her of the ball of cotton which alone could show her the way. She had now no peace until she discovered where this ball was concealed, and then she made some fine silken shirts, and as she had learnt of her mother, she sewed within each a charm. One day soon after, when the king was gone out hunting, she took the little shirts and went into the forest, and the cotton showed her the path. The children, seeing someone coming in the distance, thought it was their dear father, and ran out full of joy. Then she threw over each of them a shirt, that, as it touched their bodies, changed them into swans, which flew away over the forest. The queen then went home quite contented, and thought she was free of her stepchildren, but the little girl had not met her with the brothers, and the queen did not know of her. The following day the king went to visit his children, but he found only the maiden. "Where are your brothers?" asked he. "Ah, dear father," she replied, "they are gone away and have left me alone." And she told him how she had looked out of the window and seen them changed into swans, which had flown over the forest. And then she showed him the feathers which they had dropped in the courtyard, and which she had collected together. The king was much grieved, but he did not think that his wife could have done this wicked deed, and as he feared the girl might also be stolen away, he took her with him. She was, however, so much afraid of the stepmother that she begged him not to stop more than one night in the castle. The poor maiden thought to herself, "This is no longer my place. I will go and seek my brothers." And when night came, she escaped and went quite deep into the wood. She walked all night long, and a great part of the next day, until she could go no further from weariness. Just then she saw a rough-looking hut, and going in, she found a room with 6 little beds, but she dared not get into one, so crept under, and laying herself upon the hard earth, prepared to pass the night there. Just as the sun was setting, she heard a rustling, and saw 6 white swans come flying in at the window. They settled on the ground and began blowing one another until they had blown all their feathers off, and their swan's down slipped from them like a shirt. Then the maiden knew them at once for her brothers, and gladly crept out from under the bed, and the brothers were not less glad to see their sister, but their joy was of short duration. "Here you must not stay," said they to her. "This is a robber's hiding place. If they should return and find you here, they would murder you." "Can you not protect me, then?" inquired the sister. "No," they replied, "for we can only lay aside our swan's feathers for a quarter of an hour each evening, and for that time we regain our human form, but afterwards we resume our changed appearance." Their sister then asked them with tears, "Can you not be restored again?" "Oh, no," replied they, "the conditions are too difficult. For 6 long years you must neither speak nor laugh, and during that time you must sew together for us 6 little shirts of star flowers, and should there fall a single word from your lips, then all your labor will be in vain." Just as the brothers finished speaking, the quarter of an hour elapsed, and they all flew out of the window again like swans. The little sister, however, made a solemn resolution to rescue her brothers or die in the attempt, and she left the cottage, and penetrating deep into the forest, passed the night amid the branches of a tree. The next morning she went out and collected the star flowers to sew together. She had no one to converse with, and for laughing she had no spirits. So there up in the tree she sat, intent upon her work. After she had passed some time there, it happened that the king of that country was hunting in the forest, and his huntsmen came beneath the tree on which the maiden sat. They called to her and asked, "Who art thou?" But she gave no answer. "Come down to us," continued they. "We will do thee no harm." She simply shook her head, and when they pressed her further with questions, she threw down to them her gold necklace, hoping therewith to satisfy them. They did not, however, leave her, and she threw down her girdle, but in vain, and even her rich dress did not make them desist. At last the huntsman himself climbed the tree and brought down the maiden, and took her before the king. The king asked her, "Who art thou? What dost thou upon that tree?" But she did not answer, and then he questioned her in all the languages that he knew, but she remained dumb to all as a fish. Since, however, she was so beautiful, the king's heart was touched, and he conceived for her a strong affection. Then he put around her his cloak, and placing her before him on his horse, took her to his castle. There he ordered rich clothing to be made for her, and although her beauty shone as the sunbeams, not a word escaped her. The king placed her by his side at table, and there her dignified mien and manner so won upon him that he said, "This maiden will I marry, and no other in the world," and after some days he wedded her. Now the king had a wicked stepmother, who was discontented with his marriage, and spoke evil of the young queen. "Who knows whence the wench comes?" said she. "She who cannot speak is not worthy of a king." A year after, when the queen brought her firstborn into the world, the old woman took him away. Then she went to the king and complained that the queen was a murderess. The king, however, would not believe it, and suffered no one to do any injury to his wife, who sat composedly sewing at her shirts and paying attention to nothing else. When a second child was born, the false stepmother used the same deceit, but the king again would not listen to her words, saying, "She is too pious and good to act so. Could she but speak and defend herself, her innocence would come to light." But when again the old woman stole away the third child, and then accused the queen, who answered not a word to the accusation, the king was obliged to give her up to be tried, and she was condemned to suffer death by fire. When the time had elapsed, and the sentence was to be carried out, it happened that the very day had come round when her dear brothers should be set free. The 6 shirts were also ready, all but the last, which yet wanted the left sleeve. As she was led to the scaffold, she placed the shirts upon her arm, and just as she had mounted it, and the fire was about to be kindled, she looked around and saw 6 swans come flying through the air. Her heart leapt for joy as she perceived her deliverers approaching, and soon the swans, flying towards her, alighted so near that she was enabled to throw over them the shirts, and as soon as she had done so, their feathers fell off, and the brothers stood up alive and well, but the youngest was without his left arm, instead of which he had a swan's wing. They embraced and kissed each other, and the queen, going to the king, who was thunderstruck, began to say, "Now may I speak, my dear husband, and prove to you that I am innocent and falsely accused?" And then she told him how the wicked woman had stolen away and hidden her 3 children. When she had concluded, the king was overcome with joy, and the wicked stepmother was led to the scaffold and bound to the stake and burnt to ashes. The king and queen forever after lived in peace and prosperity with their 6 brothers. The magic swan. There were once upon a time 3 brothers, of whom the eldest was called Jacob, the second Frederick, and the youngest Peter. This youngest brother was made a regular butt of by the other 2, and they treated him shamefully. If anything went wrong with their affairs, Peter had to bear the blame and put things right for them, and he had to endure all this ill treatment because he was weak and delicate and couldn't defend himself against his stronger brothers. The poor creature had a most trying life of it in every way, and day and night he pondered how he could make it better. One day, when he was in the wood gathering sticks and crying bitterly, a little old woman came up to him and asked him what was the matter, and he told her all his troubles. "Come, my good youth," said the old dame, when he had finished his tale of woe, "isn't the world wide enough? Why don't you set out and try your fortune somewhere else?" Peter took her words to heart and left his father's house early one morning to try his fortune in the wide world, as the old woman had advised him. But he felt very bitterly parting from the home where he had been born, and where he had at least passed a short but happy childhood, and sitting down on a hill, he gazed once more fondly on his native place. Suddenly the little old woman stood before him and, tapping him on the shoulder, said, "So far good, my boy, but what do you mean to do now?" Peter was at a loss what to answer, for so far he had always thought that fortune would drop into his mouth like a ripe cherry. The old woman, who guessed his thoughts, laughed kindly and said, "I'll tell you what you must do, for I've taken a fancy to you, and I'm sure you won't forget me when you've made your fortune." Peter promised faithfully he wouldn't, and the old woman continued, "This evening at sunset, go to yonder pear tree, which you see growing at the crossroads. Underneath it you will find a man lying asleep, and a beautiful large swan will be fastened to the tree close to him. You must be careful not to waken the man, but you must unfasten the swan and take it away with you. You will find that everyone will fall in love with its beautiful plumage, and you must allow anyone who likes to pull out a feather, but as soon as the swan feels as much as a finger on it, it will scream out, and then you must say, 'Swan, hold fast.' Then the hand of the person who has touched the bird will be held as in a vice, and nothing will set it free unless you touch it with this little stick which I will make you a present of. When you have captured a whole lot of people in this way, lead your train straight on with you. You will come to a big town where a princess lives who has never been known to laugh. If you can only make her laugh, your fortune is made. Then I beg you won't forget your old friend." Peter promised again that he wouldn't, and at sunset he went to the tree the old woman had mentioned. The man lay there fast asleep, and a large beautiful swan was fastened to the tree beside him by a red cord. Peter loosed the bird and led it away with him without disturbing the bird's master. He walked on with the swan for some time and came at last to a building yard where some men were busily at work. They were all lost in admiration of the bird's beautiful plumage, and one forward youth, who was covered with clay from head to foot, called out, "Oh, if I'd only one of those feathers, how happy I should be!" "Pull one out then," said Peter kindly, and the youth seized one from the bird's tail. Instantly the swan screamed, and Peter called out, "Swan, hold fast," and do what he could, the poor youth couldn't get his hand away. The more he howled, the more the others laughed, till a girl who had been washing clothes in the neighboring stream hurried up to see what was the matter. When she saw the poor boy fastened to the swan, she felt so sorry for him that she stretched out her hand to free him. The bird screamed. "Swan, hold fast," called out Peter, and the girl was caught also. When Peter had gone on for a bit with his captives, they met a chimney sweep who laughed loudly over the extraordinary troop and asked the girl what she was doing. "Oh, dearest John," replied the girl, "give me your hand and set me free from this cursed young man." "Most certainly I will, if that's all you want," replied the sweep, and gave the girl his hand. The bird screamed. "Swan, hold fast," said Peter, and the blind was added to their number. They soon came to a village where a fair was being held. A traveling circus was giving a performance, and the clown was just doing his tricks. He opened his eyes wide with amazement when he saw the remarkable trio fastened on to the swan's tail. "Have you gone raving mad, Black?" he asked, as well as he could for laughing. "It's no laughing matter," the sweep replied. "This wench has got so tight hold of me that I feel as if I were glued to her. Do set me free like a good clown, and I'll do you a good turn some day." Without a moment's hesitation, the clown grasped the stretched hand. The bird screamed. "Swan, hold fast," called out Peter, and the clown became the fourth of the party. Now in the front row of the spectators sat the respected and popular mayor of the village, who was much put out by what he considered nothing but a foolish trick. So much annoyed was he that he seized the clown by the hand and tried to tear him away in order to hand him over to the police. Then the bird screamed, and Peter called out, "Swan, hold fast," and the dignified mayor shared the fate of his predecessors. The mayoress, a long, thin stick of a woman, enraged at the insult done to her husband, seized his free arm and tore at it with all her might, with the only result that she too was forced to swell the procession. After this, no one else had any wish to join them. Soon Peter saw the towers of the capital in front of him. Just before entering it, a glittering carriage came out to meet him, in which was seated a young lady as beautiful as the day, but with a very solemn and serious expression. But no sooner had she perceived the motley crowd fastened to the swan's tail than she burst into a loud fit of laughter, in which she was joined by all her servants and ladies in waiting. "The princess has laughed at last," they all cried with joy. She stepped out of her carriage to look more closely at the wonderful sight, and laughed again over the capers the poor captives cut. She ordered her carriage to be turned round and drove slowly back into the town, never taking her eyes off Peter and his procession. When the king heard the news that his daughter had actually laughed, he was more than delighted, and had Peter and his marvelous train brought before him. He laughed himself when he saw them till the tears rolled down his cheeks. "My good friend," he said to Peter, "do you know what I promised the person who succeeded in making the princess laugh?" "No, I don't," said Peter. "Then I'll tell you," answered the king. 1,000 gold crowns or a piece of land. Which will you choose?" Peter decided in favor of the land. Then he touched the youth, the girl, the sweep, the clown, the mayor, and the mayoress with his little stick, and they were all free again and ran away home as if a fire were burning behind them, and their flight, as you may imagine, gave rise to renewed merriment. Then the princess felt moved to stroke the swan, at the same time admiring its plumage. The bird screamed. "Swan, hold fast," called out Peter, and so he won the princess for his bride. But the swan flew up into the air and vanished in the blue horizon. Peter became a very great man indeed, but he did not forget the little old woman who had been the cause of all his good fortune, and appointed her as head housekeeper to him and his royal bride in their magnificent castle.